Story 1. The Grand Canyon, with its vast, timeless beauty, seemed like the perfect place to escape. The vast vistas, the silence that stretched for miles, all promised a peaceful retreat. We found a secluded spot near the rim, where the world seemed distant, and set up camp as the sun dipped below the horizon, dyeing the sky a deep orange and purple. But as night fell, the silence of the canyon became unnerving. That was when a man, disheveled and gaunt, emerged from the darkness as if the darkness itself had shaped. His eyes, hollow and piercing, held secrets we did not want to discover, secrets that seemed older than the canyon walls themselves. "Need firewood?" he asked, his voice hoarse and deep, a smile spreading across his face, a little too much, too unnatural. We hesitated, a feeling of unease creeping into the pit of our stomachs. We politely declined, trying to hide our discomfort, but he lingered, his eyes never leaving us, as if judging us for something we couldn't understand. As we settled into our tents, the night grew colder, and the silence of the canyon was broken by the snapping of branches. At first, we told ourselves it was just the wind, maybe a stray animal, but the snapping grew louder, closer, with each passing minute, a deliberate, menacing sound that sent our nerves into a tailspin. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, barely daring to breathe. The others nodded, their faces pale in the dim light. We listened, trying to catch every sound, but all we heard was the constant snapping, circling our camp like a predator stalking its prey. We held our breath, each cry tightening the fear in our chests. The image of the man flashed through our minds, his uneasy smile, the way he looked at us. We knew, in that moment, that we had to leave. As the sky grew light, we hastily packed our things, the once awesome canyon now looking like a trap. We ran without looking back, the fear of what might be out there driving us to run. When we finally reached the ranger station and reported our discovery, but we knew the truth. There was something out there, something that had been watching and waiting in the vastness of the Grand Canyon, something we never wanted to face again. Story 2. The Black Hills of South Dakota were supposed to be our escape, a place where we could leave our worries behind and immerse ourselves in the beauty of the wilderness. The crackling campfire and the endless starry sky above us brought us peace, and our laughter echoed through the trees, blending with the sounds of nature. But the laughter that found us that night was not ours. It started faintly, a distant chuckle, almost joyful, drifting through the cool night air. At first, we thought it was just an echo, a joke played on the wind. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice tinged with worry. The others nodded, their smiles fading as the laughter grew louder, closer with each passing moment. "What was that?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling. None of us had an answer. We huddled together in the tent, the once cozy space now stifling. Laughter surrounded us, a chorus of voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It wasn't the cheerful sound we'd shared before. It was mocking, sinister, growing louder, more persistent. "It's probably just the kids teasing us," David said, trying to sound brave, but his voice was shaking. We both knew there was no one else out there. The nearest campsite was miles away. Then came the gentle, deliberate scraping of our tent flap, a sound so subtle yet so close it sent a shiver down our spines. "Who's out there?" I called, my voice cracking with fear. There was no answer, just laughter, inches away now, and the scraping, as if something or someone was toying with us, waiting for us to crumble. We couldn't take it anymore. "Run, run," I screamed, and we dashed out of the tent, our flashlights barely piercing the dense darkness. We ran blindly through the trees, laughter still echoing behind us, not daring to look back. When we finally reached the car, panting and shaking, we knew one thing for sure. The Black Hills, once our refuge, had become a place we would never return to. The echoes of that night still haunted us, a reminder that some places held secrets that were better left untouched. Story 3. We were just kids, eager for the adventure that came with being a Boy Scout. The Appalachian forest, dense and ancient, had always called to us, promising nights filled with stories and laughter under the stars. But that night, as we pitched our tents deep in the woods, the shadows seemed longer, the silence heavier. What we didn't know was that the darkness would bring more than just the whisper of the wind and the rustling of leaves. It was well past midnight when I heard the sounds. Footsteps, slow and cautious, stepping on the dry leaves outside my tent. I froze listening, each step growing louder, closer. My heart pounded in my chest as I peered through the small opening, hoping it was just my imagination. But out there, a tall figure, shadowy, barely visible in the darkness, moved with eerie silence. The face was hidden in the darkness, its presence terrifying me. I wanted to scream, to call out to the others, but fear took over my voice. Instead, I tried to whisper frantically to warn the children in my tent. But they were as paralyzed as I was, their wide eyes mirroring the terror we all felt. The footsteps stopped just outside our tent, the fabric barely rustling as the figure loomed over us. The tension in the air was stifling, each second feeling like a century. Finally, I heard our captains approaching, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Flashes of light flickered in the trees, but by the time they reached our tent, the figure was gone, swallowed up by the night. We huddled together, our breaths shaky, unable to shake the feeling that we were inches away from something sinister. That night, the Appalachian woods were no longer a place of adventure and excitement. They became a place of nightmares, of shadows that moved when they shouldn't have, of fear that gripped our every thought. I never went camping again. The memory of that shadow, silent and terrifying, still haunts me, a reminder that some shadows should never be chased. Story 4. The wilderness of Yosemite National Park, which I had once considered paradise, became my solitary. Camera in hand, I wandered among the towering sequoias, capturing every majestic moment. The golden light filtering through the trees, the mist rising from the waterfalls, and the endless starry sky above. In this vast silence, I felt a peace I had never felt before. But I would soon realize that there were moments I should not have captured. Back home, I sat at my desk, eager to review the photos from the trip, wanting to relive the serenity of my days in Yosemite. Each photo evoked a perfect day in nature, but then I found them. 2 photos that did not belong here. The first was a clear image of my tent, the tent flap ajar, and me inside, fast asleep in my sleeping bag. My heart began to race. I clicked the next photo, hoping it was just a trick of the light, but the second was even closer, taken from inside the tent, just inches from my face. My expression was impassive, unaware that the lens was hovering above my head, capturing a moment of utter vulnerability. My body went cold. I was alone, or so I thought. Realizing that someone or something was there with me, watching me in my most defenseless state, was an indescribable violation. The safety and solitude I had felt in the wilderness was shattered in an instant. The thought of returning to the woods, once a place of comfort, now filled me with dread. The photos were proof that the wilderness was not only beautiful, but also filled with invisible dangers, shadows that silently watched and waited. I will never turn back, leaving behind the wild places that once called to me, haunted by the knowledge that in the silence of the night, I am not alone.